Today we live in a debt-based monetary system. In previous history, we had money, currency that was backed by gold. In previous economic systems, actually, gold was the currency, but gold doesn't work. It doesn't work efficiently in a modernized economy. So they had paper notes, and those paper notes work, right? But there's trust that you have to have that your gold is there to back them. And history is riddled with people, governments, banks, institutions breaking that trust of they would have this certain amount of gold, but they would create more paper against the gold. So this led to massive busts and depressions and bank runs. And so now, post 1971, the entire world abandoned gold as a backing for money, right? It's actually this current financial system, the current system of money and currency that we are all living under is actually relatively new. In many people's lifetimes, it's actually emerged. So this is not, that's how it's always been at all. And actually, this entire thing is one big massive experiment of, on a global scale, every currency is only backed by debt. And by debt, what do I mean? And it means that a bank lends money out, and when they make a loan, they create money. So a bank has assets, they lend money into existence. So all of the money in circulation, trillions upon trillions of dollars, has been lent into existence in this current system. So the bank creates money, not the government. The banks lend money into existence. And so this entire system is based on debt, it's based on credit. And if all of the debt in the world was paid back, there would be zero money in the system. So the entire system is dependent on more and more and more loans, lending, debt. So the only way for this current financial system to sustain itself is more credit, more debt, more loans forever. The money supply can never go down on a sustained period of time, or else it will all collapse, because you have to pay back every loan that's made in principal plus the interest. And by definition, that requires more money. So the current financial system is designed to slowly, silently rob you of your purchasing power, of your time, of your labor, if you don't position yourself accordingly. There's a concept of central bank digital currencies that is mostly in an idea phase at this point, but many governments, many Western nations, developing nations too, have discussed this idea of instead of an abstract financial system of financial institutions and banks and credit card processors, which if you peel back the onion actually doesn't make all that much sense anyway. It's kind of this wonky system that was thrown together over time, and that's very clanky and it doesn't fit well, but your phone it makes it seem like it's very, very easy. You scan something, you swipe a credit card, it seems like it's smooth. Behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of complexity. The government and the central banks have proposed a solution to save you from all of this abstract system. A central bank digital currency, completely issued, owned, and controlled by the central banks. And this is a very, very dystopian system, because even though cash devalues every year, even though your money buys 2, 3, 4, 5% less every single year, you can still hold cash. You can still withdraw money. You can still have some say over it. If it's in a bank, you're at their discretion. But you can hold, at least you could hold cash. With a central bank digital currency, although it hasn't been rolled out, they not only control the supply, they not only control the issuance, they not only control the flow, but they can arbitrarily censor you, steal your money. In China, they have a social credit system. So, in Western nations, you have a credit score based on how much money you borrow and your income, and based on how much you've been a reliable debtor in the past. Well, in China, they have a social credit system. So if you say something bad about a politician, they ding you. If you jaywalk on the street, they ding you. And with a CBDC, they can implement, and they've even talked about this behind the scenes, of implementing a social credit scoring system with your money. And it's the ultimate dystopian panopticon idea of having the government surveillance system, state system, intertwined with your money. And if you think of what money is, it's just the fruits of your labor that you store in a medium. And so when that system comes to fruition, it's the end of all sovereignty and all rights for the users that partake in such a system. Bitcoin is an emergent system that was released by a pseudonymous programmer in 2008 as a solution to a lot of these ills, to a lot of these problems. It's open source software, so no one person controls it, runs it, can stop it. It's an opt-in system, so everybody, if they want to play by the rules, can use Bitcoin, can operate Bitcoin, can buy, send, hold, receive Bitcoin. But because of this, not one person can change the rules, otherwise you're not using Bitcoin. So what is it? Why does it have value? Well, it's an intangible thing. It's obviously digital. It's a monetary commodity of sorts. And what gives its value, aside from users valuing it, is there's what's called proof of work, right? It's not just a virtual abstract idea. Well, there is a social layer to it, but there's a tangible cost to Bitcoin. And every Bitcoin is mined into existence. And every Bitcoin that has been mined has had energy and computation expended to introduce it into a supply, which is unique among cryptocurrencies. Not every cryptocurrency has this dynamic. So Bitcoin is programmatically, over time, becoming harder and harder and harder and harder to produce. It takes more and more computation and energy to produce one Bitcoin. And many people say this is bad. It's wrong. Energy use and harnessing energy efficiently is the backbone of advanced civilization. And human living standards are a direct one-to-one correlation with our ability to use, channel energy. Energy consumption, energy production is one-to-one with human living standards. And that's just an empirical fact. So the fact that Bitcoin uses energy is not a bad thing. And it's actually one of the biggest innovations of our time that's not actually understood. The fact that Bitcoin is the first system ever that is a buyer of energy, a user of energy anywhere that doesn't need to be connected to the grid with a mere satellite signal to channel energy into a monetary unit is one of the most empowering technologies we've ever had. And aside from that, it can balance grids. You know, it's a load balancer on-off switch that allows this energy revolution that so many people are shooting for, the green energy revolution. Well, the fact is, if you want this green energy revolution, you need a dynamic system to adjust for the volatility of energy demand. When there's not a lot of energy demand, you need these systems to be able to have that energy available. So when energy is in demand, they can quickly turn off and divert the supply. And there's nothing like Bitcoin in that regard. Bitcoin's very hard to see when you're in the system itself. One analogy is the Matrix, but maybe a more simple analogy is, does a fish know it's swimming in water? They've never known anything different than that environment. So when you think about money, right, the people that have kind of been born into the system or have grown up in the system simply think it's how the world works, that your money slowly buys less and less of the same thing, or maybe rather they think of it that prices rise by the natural order of prices is that they always rise, without questioning why that is the case. If we become more advanced and more technologically advanced, and civilization continues to become more productive, why do prices rise? Why has the price of an education increased fivefold since 1980s as information has become more abundant than ever? These are the questions that aren't asked typically. And when you peel back everything, the root answer, and there's other factors, but the root of the problem is the money is broken. So that's it. I didn't really answer your question, but why is Bitcoin so hard to grasp? Is because it's such an advanced system, and there's also thousands of other cryptocurrencies that are completely different from Bitcoin's path-dependent, emergent introduction into the world. where Bitcoin proliferated around the world for almost 2 years without a single penny worth of value. People mining it, distributing supply. It got to the point where it's sufficiently decentralized so not one person has control over the system. And every other cryptocurrency, every other fiat currency doesn't have that, which is why Bitcoin is special. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and this was preset in the design by whomever released the code for Bitcoin. So now that when anybody runs the Bitcoin protocol, anybody that uses Bitcoin is agreeing to this consensus of 21 million. And any rules that change this make that very thing not Bitcoin. So not only is it the only asset on the planet that is absolutely scarce, but it's also the only thing that we've ever seen that relative to demand, supply and the production of it is fixed. So when the price of apartments go up, you build more apartments. When the price of stocks go up, you can issue more shares. When the price of gold goes up, everybody rushes to the mines to extract more gold. When the price of oil goes up, they drill more wells, they frack the earth and produce more oil. Bitcoin is the only thing humans have ever known that as price goes up, no more supply can be introduced into the system. And it becomes harder and harder and harder to produce, like a carrot in front of a mule. As you try to produce more of it, it gets harder and harder and harder to create, to issue. So that's what makes Bitcoin unique. And that's why, despite it dying hundreds of times, Bitcoin's price has risen tens of thousands of %, and it never seems to actually die, as everybody claims. Bitcoin for me is a tool that I use to save the fruits of my labor and my time into the future without having politicians, governments, and banks that can devalue my money and steal from me and my future purchasing power. So whether the dollar price goes up, down, or sideways in the next day, week, month, year, I know that nobody can print more Bitcoins. I know that nobody can take my money because I own it mathematically. And so there's nothing else in the world that I could take all of my money, put it in my head, and take it anywhere without anybody else stealing from me.
Yeah.
Fiat currencies steal from you. Cryptocurrencies as well. And Bitcoin is fundamentally different from that perspective. And it's essentially the emergence of property rights on the internet. The internet stack, if you think about the rise of the internet, there's all of these messaging systems and telecommunication systems and protocols that have been built on top of the internet. TCP, the email stack, right? These are all protocols. And for the longest time, they couldn't figure out value transfer. MasterCard, Visa, these were institutions that arose to solve these problems, but they didn't solve anything. So Bitcoin was the first system, protocol, network that figured out not only value transfer, but the internet of value itself.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Of course, man.